My name is Haj. I'm a hobbyist nature wildlife photographer, and you can find some of my photos at hajakil.com. One of the genre of photography that I like is macro photography. And back in 2012, when I first got my DSLR camera, I was using the Tamron 90mm 2.8. It was that version without the vibration control, but with focusing motor. And then afterwards I was upgrading my lens to this 90mm Tamron lens, still 2.8, but with the vibration control. This is not the latest version, actually. This is the version before the latest one. In macro photography, one of the main challenges is actually to get the maximum magnification while still keep certain distance from the animal in order for them not to run away from you. And for that, it helps to have a longer focal lens, and that's why I bought this Tamron lens, 180mm 3.5, and then later on the Sigma 180mm 2.8. In this review, I will talk about my user experience with all those three lenses, and I will tell you later on why I decided to sell instead the Sigma lens and kept the two Tamron lens instead. Contrary to what you might have think, I would not talk actually about image quality, because all of those three lenses are terrific. They produce super image quality. They're very sharp, they are very vivid, the bokeh is very nice. So if there is some problem in the image, I would say it's more the fault of the photographer than the lens. Instead, I will talk more about the handling of the lens per se, their value, and compatibility with cameras and teleconverters, because I rarely use them without the teleconverter. So when it comes to price, the little 90mm lens is actually the cheapest among them. It cost around 300 euros used, while the Tamron 180mm cost around 400 euros, and the Sigma cost still 1000 euros used. So if money is a question, and then I would say just remove the Sigma out of the equation. It's not worth it. Go with either the Tamron lens or 180mm or the 90mm. Price out of the way, as I mentioned before, minimum focusing distance is actually quite important when it comes to macro photography, because you don't want to scare the animal. You don't want to be too close and then the insects just fly away. Unfortunately, the shorter your focal length, the cheaper the price of the lens, but you will have to be very close to your subject. For example, with this 90mm lens, it has a minimum focusing distance of 30 centimeters, and that is not from the tip of the lens or from the mount. It's actually from the focal plane of the camera. So you have to measure 30 centimeters from here, which is then about roughly there. So your subject is about there at maximum magnification life size when you try to take picture of it. And that just doesn't work with skittish animals. On the other hand, the 180mm lens, they have a minimum focusing distance of 47 centimeters. So it gives you then a little bit more room between yourself and the subject, and they also then tend to not run away too early. However, I find the Tamron lens even at edge here, because actually it's slightly shorter than the Sigma lens. So actually there will be a little bit more distance between the lens wood and the subject for the Tamron lens than with the Sigma lens. I hope it makes sense. I can draw a little diagram later on, but just ask me a question in the comment below if you need more information about this minimum focusing distance subject. Another thing that you will notice right away as well is that the lenses here differ significantly when it comes to size, but also when it comes also to weight. The 90mm lens weigh only around 590 gram. The Tamron 180 is around 940 gram, while the Sigma 180mm 2.8 weigh 1630 gram. That is a lot of weight to carry around when you are going on a hike or when you handhold the lens and running after an insect. Me personally, I don't mind the weight. I'm carrying an 800mm, 600mm, 500mm lens, and I don't have problem with that. If I want certain pictures, and then I just carry the lens that I need. But for some people, it might be too heavy for them. So put that also in the equation when you decide to get then one of those lenses. Next is autofocus. Autofocus is one controversial subject in macro photography. Someone will tell you like, well, it's completely useless. Other will be like, well, it's useful. Me personally, I would rather have it and then override it then manually rather than not have it at all. But that is my opinion. So when it comes to autofocus, the 90mm lens and the Sigma lens actually autofocus pretty fast. It can keep track nicely of little moving insects, while just forget about it when it comes to autofocus in the 180mm Tamron lens. This lens is a sloth, it is a snail. It just cannot keep up with anything that moves. It has an autofocus, but it is completely useless. This lens is just, for me, in my opinion, a manual lens. Is that a problem? Yes and no, because again, in most of the situation, you might want to focus on a very specific spot on your subject, and the only way to do that is actually by focusing manually. In that case, then it doesn't really matter. But when it comes to a subject which is moving around a little bit and you want to focus track it, and then just doesn't help this lens. Better get actually the 90mm lens or the Sigma lens instead. As I mentioned before as well, I rarely use those lens pair. In order to get a little bit more magnification, I'm attaching either 1.4 or a 2 times teleconverter, or even stacking two teleconverter at the same time. But none of those lenses are actually compatible with the Nikon original teleconverter. You will have to invest on a third-party teleconverter instead. For my Tamron lens, I'm using the Kenko teleconverter, and it's the 1.4 and the 2 times teleconverter. And for Sigma, I have the 1.4 and the 2 times AXDJ sigma teleconverter. So they then allow you to get a little bit more magnification, which is always handy when it comes to macro photography, but also it even allow you to step a little bit even far away from the animal that you are trying to photograph as well. One thing that I find also nice in the Tamron lens, and you might want also to consider, is actually the ability to use a ring flash on the lens. I have a ring flash, and all I need to do is actually screw the ring flash on the filter thread of the lens, and then here we go, it's ready to go. Because this lens 72 millimeters filter thread, while the 90 millimeters have only a 58 millimeters thread. So you just attached an adapter and then the filter and then the flash, and then it's ready to go. While the Sigma have an 86 millimeters thread, and my ring flash actually doesn't have such an adapter. My maximum adapter for the ring flash is only 77 millimeters, so there's just no way for me to use a ring flash using this Sigma lens. I will have to invest on a different flash system instead. So that would then another money to be spent if I would like to use this lens with a flash. That's then also something you want to consider if you want to buy one of those lenses. However, a bonus for the Sigma lens and the 90mm lens is that they have an image stabilization, and back in the days when I was only using a DSLR camera, it was important because you can see it. When you use the camera without the stabilization, you can see how shaky the image is in the viewfinder. And as soon as you engage the vibration control, and then you see how stable the image is, and it helps you to frame the image the way you want it, but also it allows you also to use a slower shutter speed, then have a little bit lower ISO as well. So that I find nice with the Sigma lens and the 90mm Tamron lens. And the Tamron 180mm doesn't have a vibration control. Unfortunately, Tamron never produced a newer version of the lens, so it's just stuck with it. And then the last things that I will talk about, which you might find surprising because maybe you might wonder why didn't I say it in the first place, is actually the opening. The Sigma and the 90mm Tamron lens is actually an f2.8 lens, while the Tamron 180mm is only an f3.5. I kept it on the last because in my opinion it is completely irrelevant, because I don't take macro photo at 2.8, and even if you want to, you can't, because actually those manufacturers kind of tricking us a little bit when it comes to an f-stop of macro lenses. Basically, none of those lenses really have such an f-stop because of the physical design of a macro lens. The closer you get to your subject, the smaller the aperture gets. Not really small, but the less light gets into the lens, kind of. So actually this Tamron lens 90mm 2.8 is actually a 90mm f5.6 when it comes to the realm of macro world. The 180mm 3.5 is not actually 3.5. It's actually an f5.6 once you are in the magnification of 1:1 that you're looking for. And the Sigma 2.8 is not an f2.8 in the macro world. This is actually an f5 lens. So the question is like, is 1/3 of stop actually worth the extra money that you pay for this lens? My answer is no. Couple of months ago, I almost sold my Tamron lens, the 180mm Tamron lens, because I find actually the vibration reduction in the Sigma quite nice, and also the fact that it has then an autofocus once I need it, because yes, I would rather have it and then override it rather than completely not having it at all. But nowadays with the mirrorless, since I got my mirrorless camera, I find it so easy actually to manually focus on the lens using the focus picking function. So this autofocus manual focus for me is not a problem anymore. And if ever I really need an autofocus, and then I just need to use either my DSLR camera or use then the 90mm lens. Another reason why I decided also to get rid of the Sigma lens is like, well, yeah, the weight is like, yeah, in your backpack, it's big and heavy, and you rather maybe put something else in it rather than just one lens. And finally, about the image stabilization, I almost kept it because of the image stabilization. But nowadays, actually, mirrorless camera have an image stabilization incorporated in the body of the camera. They have an in-body image stabilization. So nowadays, even with this old lens, I can have actually an image stabilization. So it's not really a necessity that I need anymore. And therefore, I decided to get rid of the Sigma lens. So I hope I made the right decision, but what do you think? Let me know in the comment below. Would you have kept the Sigma lens, which I think it's not worth its price, or would you have taken the same road as I did? Let me know, and until next time, bye.